The Manhattan Charity Gala glittered with old money and new power, but for Christina Barman, every champagne flute raised felt like a silent accusation. 2 years had passed since her husband's scandal plunged her from Upper East Side penthouse to a studio apartment in Queens. 2 years of whispers that followed her like shadows. The Black Widow, came the murmurs, sharp as knives behind designer smiles. How dare she show her face here? Christina's fingers tightened around the simple black clutch. No jewelry, no ornamentation, just Andrew's wedding band on a chain inside. She shouldn't have come. But the event organizer had promised her accounting work, legitimate work, and she was 3 weeks from eviction. She pressed against the marble wall, a shadow in her off-the-rack black dress among women dripping in diamonds. Evelyn Hartman, her former friend turned social executioner, held court nearby, blonde and brilliant in crimson silk. Evelyn's laugh cut through the classical music as she stage-whispered to her circle, "Poor Christina. I heard she's taking night classes in bookkeeping. How the mighty have fallen. Though I suppose when your husband steals 40 million before conveniently drowning himself, employment options narrow considerably." Christina closed her eyes briefly. Each word struck true. Before you click away. Our original channel was suspended by YouTube without warning or any strikes and no explanation. Years of stories gone in an instant. We're rebuilding from zero and honestly, it's heartbreaking. Christina's story doesn't end here. She's about to collide with the most dangerous man in Manhattan, and what happens next will leave you breathless. But we can't continue creating these stories without you. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's our lifeline. It tells us someone out there cares, that our work matters, that rebuilding is worth it. If you've enjoyed even 1 minute of this story, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. It takes 2 seconds, but it means everything to us. We pour our hearts into every scene, every character, every word. Don't let this story die unfinished. Subscribe now. Help us rise from the ashes. Be part of Christina's journey. Your support is the only reason we keep creating. Let me ask you this. Do you think desperation makes us brave or just reckless? You can answer in the comments section. Christina's hands trembled as she accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter, though she had no intention of drinking it. The crystal stem gave her something to hold, a prop to justify her presence in this glittering Manhattan ballroom where she clearly didn't belong anymore. 2 years ago, she'd walked these marble floors in Valentino and Harry Winston diamonds. Tonight, her off-the-rack black dress from Macy's felt like a confession. Is that Christina Barman? The whisper sliced through the string quartet's Mozart. The Black Widow herself. How dare she show her face? Christina pressed herself against the cool marble wall, making herself smaller, invisible. The Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dender soared above her, ancient Egyptian stone incongruous with the Manhattan elite sipping Dom Perignon beneath its columns. She shouldn't have come. But the event organizer had promised her legitimate accounting work. Actual work, not the pity handouts from Andrew's former colleagues that dried up after the first month. She was 3 weeks from eviction. Evelyn Hartman held court near the reflecting pool, a vision in crimson silk and calculated cruelty. Once they'd been friends. Once, Evelyn had sat in Christina's penthouse kitchen drinking wine and laughing about their husbands' golf obsessions. Now Evelyn's voice carried across the room with surgical precision. Poor Christina. I heard she's taking night classes in bookkeeping. How the mighty have fallen. The circle around Evelyn tittered on cue. Christina recognized them all. Women who'd attended Andrew's funeral with mascara-perfect tears, then ghosted her completely when the scandal broke. Though I suppose when your husband steals $40 million before conveniently drowning himself, Evelyn continued, her blonde hair catching the chandelier light like a halo, employment options narrow considerably. Christina's fingers tightened around the champagne flute until she thought it might shatter. Andrew hadn't stolen anything. Andrew had been murdered. She knew it in her bones, in the hollow space where her heart used to be. But knowing and proving were different things, and the police had closed the case months ago. If you knew the truth but couldn't prove it, would you still fight? Or would you let the world believe the lie? She edged toward the exit, keeping to the shadows. Just 30 more minutes until she could claim she'd networked and leave with whatever dignity remained. The event organizer had her number. If there was actual work to be had, they'd call. If not, she'd figure something else out. She always did. Christina moved along the periphery of the ballroom, eyes down, invisible in her widow's black among the peacock display of Manhattan wealth. She didn't see the wall of muscle until she collided with it. The impact sent her champagne flute flying. Crystal shattered against marble. The string quartet's music died mid-note. Every conversation in the room ceased simultaneously, as if someone had pressed a cosmic mute button. Christina looked up. And up. The man towering over her was carved from shadow and menace. Korean features, impossibly sharp cheekbones, hair swept back from a face that could have graced magazine covers if his eyes hadn't been so utterly devoid of warmth. His black suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. Everything about him screamed power, the kind that didn't ask permission. "I'm so sorry," Christina whispered, though the words felt inadequate. "I didn't see." The room held its breath. Christina felt the weight of 300 gazes, all waiting for the explosion. Because this man, she'd seen his photograph in the Times business section, though never his name, just references to controversial Korean investor and financial interests. This man was Hyun-woo Park. And his reputation preceded him like a warning siren. He destroyed people who disrespected him. Utterly. Completely. Christina braced for the storm. It didn't come. Instead, Hyun-woo Park stood perfectly still, his dark eyes traveling over her face with an intensity that felt physical. Not assessing her dress or jewelry or social worth. Assessing her. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, suffocating. Then his gaze shifted, moving past Christina to the crowd behind her. To Evelyn Hartman and her circle, frozen mid-gossip with their mouths slightly open. "The Black Widow," Hyun-woo said, his accent barely noticeable beneath the cultured English. His voice was smoke and silk. Such creative cruelty. "Tell me, Mrs. Hartman," Evelyn's eyes widened at being addressed directly, "do you sleep well at night? Or do the lies you've spread about this woman disturb your rest?" The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Christina's heart hammered against her ribs. Hyun-woo stepped forward, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea before Moses. He moved with predatory grace, stopping directly in front of Evelyn. "The only criminals in this room are those who destroyed an innocent woman's reputation to cover their own sins. Your father's offshore accounts, Mrs. Hartman. Shall we discuss those publicly? Or would you prefer to remain silent?" Evelyn's face drained of color. Her champagne glass trembled. Around her, the sharks smelled blood in the water and began edging away. "What would you do if someone exposed your darkest secrets in front of everyone you know?" Hyun-woo turned back to Christina, who stood frozen against the wall, her mind unable to process what was happening. He extended his hand, not a request but a command. "Ms. Barman, walk with me." It wasn't a question. But his eyes held something unexpected. Not pity. Recognition. As if he saw past the cheap dress and the whispers and the scandal, straight through to the woman underneath who was fighting to survive. Christina placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers with surprising gentleness, though the strength beneath was unmistakable. The crowd parted as Hyun-woo led her through the ballroom, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm like she belonged there. Behind them, Christina heard Evelyn's voice, shrill and desperate. "She's nothing. A nobody. Why would you?" "Because," Hyun-woo said without turning around, his voice carrying across the marble and stone, "she is now under my protection. Anyone who wishes to harm her will answer to me personally." The ballroom doors closed behind them. Christina found herself in the museum's dimly lit hallway, alone with the most dangerous man in New York, her heart racing and her mind screaming questions she didn't dare voice. Hyun-woo released her hand but didn't step away. "You're shaking. You just declared war on Manhattan society for a complete stranger," Christina whispered. "Why?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. "You're not a stranger anymore, Christina Barman. As of 30 seconds ago, you're mine to protect. Would you accept protection from a dangerous man, knowing you might never escape?" Or would you choose pride and poverty instead? The question hung between them like smoke, and Christina realized with absolute clarity that her life had just changed forever. She simply didn't know yet if that change meant salvation or destruction. The black SUV idled outside Christina's Queens apartment building at exactly 8:47 a.m., as out of place as a panther in a petting zoo. Christina watched from her fourth-floor window, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips, as two men in dark suits stepped out. They didn't look up. They didn't need to. She knew they were there for her. 48 hours had passed since the gala. 48 hours of her phone exploding with unknown numbers, of blocking texts from society reporters asking for statements about her relationship with the controversial Mr. Park, of lying awake wondering if she'd made a catastrophic mistake by accepting his hand that night. The knock came precisely at 9 a.m. 3 measured raps that somehow communicated both courtesy and inevitability. Christina opened the door to find a Korean man in his 30s, impeccably dressed, his expression professionally neutral. "Ms. Barman. Mr. Park requests your presence this morning. The car is waiting." Not invites. Not would like to see you. Requests. Which in Hyunwoo Park's world probably meant the same thing as a royal summons. Refusal wasn't actually an option. "What if I'm busy?" Christina heard herself say, though her calendar was emptier than her bank account. The man's expression didn't change. "Mr. Park anticipated you might have concerns. He asked me to convey that this meeting concerns your late husband's case. New evidence has emerged." The words hit like a physical blow. Christina gripped the doorframe. "What evidence?" "Mr. Park will explain personally. The penthouse is 30 minutes away. We'll wait while you prepare." If someone offered you the truth about your husband's death, would you trust them? Or would you question their motives first? 20 minutes later, Christina sat in the SUV's leather interior, watching Queens give way to Manhattan, then Manhattan give way to Billionaires Row. The building they stopped at was all glass and steel, a vertical blade cutting into the sky. The private elevator required a key card and biometric scan. They ascended in silence, Christina's stomach dropping as the numbers climbed. 40, 50, 60, 70. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Christina stepped into a space that redefined luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered 360-degree views of Manhattan. Central Park sprawled green to the north, the Hudson River glittered to the west. But the opulence wasn't ostentatious. Everything was clean lines and understated elegance. Dark wood, white marble, carefully chosen art that whispered rather than shouted wealth. A space designed by someone who had nothing to prove. Hyunwoo stood at the western windows, hands clasped behind his back, silhouetted against the morning light. He didn't turn immediately, and Christina had the unsettling sense that he knew exactly where she was, that he'd known the moment the elevator doors opened. "Thank you for coming." He turned, and in the daylight streaming through the windows, Christina could see him clearly for the first time. Younger than she'd thought, mid-30s perhaps. Exhausted though he wore it well. And those eyes, dark and fathomless, fixed on her with the same predatory focus as the gala. "Please sit. Would you like tea? Coffee?" "Answers," Christina said, surprising herself with her directness. "Your man said there's new evidence about Andrew." A slight smile touched Hyunwoo's lips, there and gone. Direct. "Good. I don't have patience for games either." He gestured to a low table where someone had already prepared tea service. Korean, the porcelain delicate and ancient looking. But first tea. And context. Christina sat on the edge of a chair that probably cost more than her car used to, before she'd sold it to make rent. Hyunwoo poured with surprising grace, the ritual somehow calming. "Your husband worked at Steinberg and Morrison," he began, settling across from her. "Investment banking, private wealth management. His clients included several offshore entities." "I know all this," Christina said. "The police investigated." "The police investigated what they were told to investigate." Hyunwoo's voice remained neutral, but something cold flickered beneath. "Your husband's embezzlement involved accounts tied to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Singapore. Sophisticated money laundering operations." Christina's hands tightened around the teacup. Andrew would never. He didn't. Hyunwoo leaned forward slightly. But someone used his access, his credentials, his reputation. Made him the perfect scapegoat. And when he discovered what was happening, when he threatened to expose it. He paused, letting her fill in the rest. They killed him. The words came out as a whisper. Christina had known it, felt it, but hearing someone else say it made it real. You can prove this. I'm working on it. Which is why I need your help. Would you partner with a criminal to prove your husband's innocence? Where's the line between justice and revenge? My help. Christina laughed, the sound bitter. I'm a disgraced widow working night classes and bookkeeping. What could I possibly offer you? You understand finance. You understand the social circles these people move in. And you have something most people don't. Hyunwoo's gaze intensified. You have nothing left to lose. The brutal honesty of it struck Christina silent. The offshore accounts your husband supposedly used, Hyunwoo continued, they're still active. Money still flows through them. The same people who destroyed Andrew are still using his death as cover for their operations. I control certain business interests in this city. Some legal, some less so. These accounts intersect with my operations, which is how I became aware of the pattern. You're telling me this was about organized crime? Christina's voice rose. Andrew got killed because he stumbled into mob business? Not mob. Worse. Legitimate society, bankers, lawyers, financiers, using the infrastructure people like me created, then discarding the evidence when it becomes inconvenient. Hyunwoo stood, walking to the windows. Your husband was an honest man in a corrupt system. That made him dangerous. Christina rose as well, her legs unsteady. Why do you care? Why investigate this at all? Hyunwoo was silent for a long moment, staring out at Manhattan. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Because I understand what it means to be blamed for crimes you didn't commit. And because... He turned, and Christina saw something vulnerable flash across his face before his control reasserted itself. Because when you collided with me that night, I saw someone being hunted. I know that look. I've worn it myself. The admission hung between them, fragile and unexpected. Before Christina could respond, a door opened and an elegant woman entered. She was perhaps 60, Korean, dressed in a silk blouse and tailored pants, her silver hair styled perfectly. Everything about her radiated quiet authority. Ah, she said in lightly accented English, her sharp eyes assessing Christina. This is the Black Widow causing such upheaval in my nephew's carefully ordered life. Christina Barman, Hyunwoo said smoothly, may I present my aunt, Mrs. Kang Soo-yeon? She'll be serving as your chaperone during your time here. Chaperone? Christina echoed. Mrs. Kang's smile was knowing. Propriety, Ms. Barman. My nephew may operate outside many laws, but even he cannot entirely escape social expectation. A young widow alone with an unmarried man in his private residence? Tongues would wag. Her eyes glinted. More than they already do. Your time here, Christina repeated, turning to Hyunwoo. You're assuming I'm staying. You'll work with my financial analyst, Hyunwoo said as if she hadn't spoken. Review the accounts, trace the money flow. Mrs. Kang will ensure you're comfortable and safe. In exchange, I'll provide everything I've uncovered about Andrew's death, and I'll use my resources to find proof. And what do you get out of this? Christina demanded. Why invest your time, your resources, your reputation in clearing a dead man's name? Hyunwoo crossed the space between them in 3 strides. He stopped close, too close, but Christina refused to back away. His voice dropped to something intimate and dangerous. I already told you. You're under my protection now. That means your husband's vindication is my mission. Your safety is my responsibility. Your enemies, his eyes went cold, are now my targets. If a dangerous man declared you his mission, would you feel protected or possessed? Christina's breath caught. This close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the exhaustion he hid so well, the intensity that seemed to burn from somewhere deep inside him. This wasn't just about justice or business. This was personal in a way she didn't fully understand yet. I can't pay you, she whispered. I'm not asking for money. Then what are you asking for? Hyunwoo's hand came up, his fingers barely brushing her jaw, a touch so light it might have been imagined. Your trust. Your cooperation. Your presence here where I know you're safe. His thumb traced along her cheekbone. Say yes, Christina? She should say no. Should walk away from this overwhelming man and his shadowy world and his dangerous promises. Should maintain what little independence she had left. But God, she was so tired of being alone. So tired of fighting battles she couldn't win. And the possibility, the hope, that Andrew's name could be cleared, that the truth could finally surface. Yes, Christina heard herself say. I'll help you. Mrs. Kong made a satisfied sound from across the room. Good. Then let's establish some ground rules, shall we? Starting with the fact that my nephew, for all his power, does not make unilateral decisions about young women's living arrangements without proper consideration for their comfort and autonomy. Hyunwoo's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Of course, Aunt. Ms. Barman, Mrs. Kong said warmly, welcome to the most complicated decision you'll ever make. I hope you survive it. The words should have sounded like a joke. They didn't. What happens when the man protecting you becomes more dangerous than the threat he's protecting you from? 3 days in Hyunwoo's world, and Christina was beginning to understand the difference between wealth and power. Wealth bought penthouses and designer clothes. Power bought silence, loyalty, and the ability to make problems disappear before they became problems. She sat in Hyunwoo's private office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling monitors displaying financial data that made her head spin. Junseo, Hyunwoo's financial analyst, a quiet man with wire-rimmed glasses and the intensity of a chess grandmaster, walked her through the labyrinth of shell corporations and offshore accounts. Here, Junseo said, highlighting a series of transactions. See the pattern? Money flows from legitimate U.S. investments into these Cayman accounts, then splits into smaller amounts across Luxembourg, Singapore, Hong Kong. Classic laundering structure. Christina leaned closer, her accounting training kicking in despite her exhaustion. But these account numbers? Junseo, these match the ones the police said Andrew used for embezzlement. Exactly. Junseo's voice was grim. Your husband's credentials were used to initialize these transfers. But look at the timestamps. Most of these transactions occurred while he was documented elsewhere. Meetings, conferences, even his gym check-ins. Someone was impersonating him digitally. Christina's stomach turned. Using his access to cover their own crimes. And when he discovered it, they eliminated him. Junseo pulled up another screen. This is where it gets interesting. The accounts are still active. Money still flows. Which means whoever killed your husband feels safe enough to continue operations. Christina's hands clenched into fists. Oh, who's doing this? We're tracing that now. But, Junseo hesitated, glancing toward the door where Mrs. Kong sat reading, ever-present and watchful. Miss Barman, you should know. One name keeps appearing in the paper trail. Richard Hartman. The room tilted. Evelyn's father? The same. His investment firm, Hartman Capital, appears as the source for several of these offshore movements. Always buried under subsidiaries and shell companies, but the pattern is there. If your former best friend's father destroyed your life, could you ever forgive her? Or does betrayal stain everyone it touches? Mrs. Kong looked up from her book, her expression thoughtful. Evelyn Hartman. The woman in red silk at the gala, yes? The one who performed your social execution so publicly? We used to be friends, Christina said quietly. Before Andrew died. Before everything fell apart. She was one of the first people I called when the police came to my door. She promised she'd help, that she believed in Andrew's innocence. The memory tasted like ash. 2 weeks later, she was leading the chorus calling me the Black Widow. Perhaps, Mrs. Kong said carefully, she had reasons beyond simple cruelty. Perhaps she was protecting her father. Or herself. The office door opened, and Hyunwoo entered with the controlled energy of a predator. He took in the scene immediately, Christina's pale face, Junseo's guilty expression, Mrs. Kang's knowing gaze. You told her about Hartman. It wasn't a question. She needed to know, Junseo said quietly. Hyunwoo's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He crossed to Christina, crouching so they were eye level. I was going to wait. Gather more evidence first. Why? Christina demanded. Why protect me from the truth? I'm not fragile. I've lived through hell these past 2 years. Because I've seen what knowledge like this does to people. The rage. The need for immediate revenge. His dark eyes searched hers. And I needed you to understand the financial structures first, to see the full picture before emotion complicated everything. You mean before I did something stupid like confront Evelyn? Exactly that. Christina stood abruptly, forcing Hyunwoo to rise with her. You think you can control how I react? Manage my emotions like you manage your criminal empire? I think, Hyunwoo said with dangerous calm, that Richard Hartman is a powerful man with extensive resources and no conscience. If he even suspects we're investigating him, he'll either disappear the evidence or eliminate the investigators. Which now includes you. The words landed like ice water. Christina's anger deflated into something colder. Fear. He's right, Ms. Barman, Junseo said quietly. Men like Hartman don't leave loose ends. Your husband learned that. Christina sank back into her chair, suddenly exhausted. So what do we do? Just collect evidence and hope he doesn't notice? We be smart. Hyunwoo moved to the windows, his silhouette dark against the afternoon light. We use the tools available to us, including Evelyn Hartman herself. Christina's head snapped up. What? Your phone has been ringing constantly since the gala, Mrs. Kang observed, setting down her book. I've been screening your calls. Evelyn Hartman has called 17 times. Each message more desperate than the last. Hyunwoo turned, his expression calculating. She wants to know what I said to you that night. Wants to know if you've turned against her father. She's terrified, Christina. Fear makes people reveal things they shouldn't. You want me to meet with her? Christina's voice was hollow. Pretend we're still friends. Spy on her. I want you to listen, Hyunwoo corrected. People like Evelyn can't resist talking when they're nervous. She'll try to manipulate you, threaten you, maybe even attempt to buy your silence. And in doing so, she'll confirm what we already suspect. Would you deceive someone who betrayed you, or does playing their game make you just as bad? I don't know if I can do that, Christina whispered. Look her in the eye and lie. I'm not built for this kind of thing. Mrs. Kang rose gracefully and crossed to Christina, placing a warm hand on her shoulder. My dear girl, you've been surviving in a hostile world for 2 years. You've endured whispers, accusations, poverty, and isolation. You're stronger than you realize. Her voice softened. But Hyunwoo is not asking you to do this. He's suggesting it. You have the right to refuse. Hyunwoo's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise or respect. My aunt is correct. This is your choice, Christina. Always. Christina looked between them. Mrs. Kang's gentle strength, Hyunwoo's coiled intensity, Junseo's careful neutrality. 3 days ago she'd been alone, drowning, invisible. Now she sat in a penthouse surrounded by people who were offering her something she'd thought lost forever. Justice. Truth. Power. If I do this, Christina said slowly, if I meet with Evelyn and play this game, I want to know everything. No more protecting me from information. No more managing my emotions. I'm either part of this investigation or I'm not. Hyunwoo's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Agreed. And I want to learn how to defend myself. Not just security guards following me around. I want to know how to protect myself if something goes wrong. I'll arrange training, Hyunwoo said immediately. Martial arts, tactical awareness, firearms if you're comfortable. I'm not comfortable with any of this, Christina admitted. But I'm done being helpless. I'm done being a victim. Mrs. Kang squeezed her shoulder approvingly. That's my girl. Christina pulled out her phone, staring at Evelyn's 17 missed calls. Her finger hovered over the callback button. 2 years of pain and betrayal, of wondering why her friend had turned on her so viciously. Maybe it was time to find out. She pressed call. Evelyn answered on the first ring. Christina. Finally. We need to talk. Christina's voice came out steady, controlled. I know. There's a restaurant, Le Bernardin, tomorrow at noon. I assume you remember it? They'd celebrated Evelyn's last birthday there, back when champagne and laughter came easily. Pause. I remember. Christina, listen, whatever that man told you. Tomorrow, Evelyn. Not on the phone. Christina ended the call before Evelyn could respond. Her hands were shaking, but her voice had been steel. Hyunwoo watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride. Possession? Something darker and more complicated? Tomorrow then, he said quietly. Junseo will wire you for audio. My people will be nearby, invisible. If anything feels wrong, if she threatens you directly, you leave immediately. What if she tells me the truth? Christina asked. What if she admits her father killed Andrew? What do I do then? You listen. You remember. And you let me handle the rest. Hyunwoo's voice dropped to something dangerous. Justice is coming for the Hartmans, Christina. Through the courts if possible. Through other means if necessary. When the law fails you, does vengeance become justice? Or does it make you just another criminal? Mrs. Kang returned to her book, but Christina caught the slight smile on the older woman's face. As if everything was proceeding exactly according to some plan only she understood. Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered in the fading light. Somewhere in that maze of glass and steel, Evelyn Hartman was probably panicking, calling her father, spinning new lies to cover old ones. And tomorrow, Christina would sit across from her former friend and play a role she'd never imagined. Spy, investigator, bait in a trap designed by a mafia boss who decided she belonged to him. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time in 2 years, Christina felt something like power stirring in her chest. Dark and unfamiliar, but undeniably real. Maybe she was more like the Black Widow than she'd realized. Maybe that wasn't such a terrible thing to be. Le Bernardin at noon was a temple of refined excess. Hushed conversations, pristine white tablecloths, the kind of restaurant where a single lunch cost more than Christina's monthly rent used to. She sat at a corner table, hyper-aware of the small device taped beneath her collar transmitting every word to Junseo somewhere in a van nearby. Hyunwoo had wanted to be closer, visible, a reminder of whose protection she operated under. Mrs. Kang had talked him down with a few sharp words in Korean that made his jaw clench but ultimately resulted in his agreement. Christina would face Evelyn alone. Well, alone except for the 2 security guards disguised as businessmen at the bar, the audio surveillance, and the knowledge that one call would bring Hyunwoo's entire organization down on this restaurant like an avenging army. Evelyn arrived 15 minutes late, a power play Christina recognized now, though she'd always interpreted it as fashionable carelessness before. She swept in wearing Chanel and anxiety, her smile brittle as spun sugar. Christina. You look different. Evelyn's gaze traveled over Christina's outfit. Not designer but no longer the desperate cheapness of the gala. Hyunwoo had insisted on providing appropriate attire for this meeting. That's a beautiful dress. Thank you. Christina kept her voice neutral. Sit. I assume you have something urgent to discuss, given the 17 phone calls. Evelyn settled across from her, immediately ordering a martini despite the early hour. Can we not do this? The hostility? We used to be friends, Christina. Best friends. That was before you called me a murderer on national television. The martini arrived with unseemly speed. Evelyn took a long drink before responding. I never said murderer. I said. You said I probably knew about Andrew's crimes. That I'd benefited from stolen money. That my grief was suspiciously performative, given how quickly I'd moved out of our penthouse. Christina kept her hands relaxed on the table, channeling Mrs. Kang's lesson from that morning. Show nothing. Feel everything. Reveal only what serves your purpose. You destroyed what was left of my reputation, Evelyn. So forgive me if I'm not interested in reminiscing about our friendship. Evelyn's perfect composure cracked slightly. I was protecting myself. You have to understand, the scandal was enormous. Anyone associated with Andrew was being investigated. I had to distance myself. By throwing me to the wolves? By surviving. Evelyn's voice rose, then dropped when nearby diners glanced over. You don't know what it's like having that kind of scrutiny on your family. The investigators looking at everyone Andrew knew, everyone he worked with, everyone in his social circle. When survival requires betrayal, does that make it forgivable? Or are some betrayals unforgivable regardless of motivation? Christina leaned forward. What investigators, Evelyn? The police closed Andrew's case months ago. Ruled it suicide driven by guilt over embezzlement. Who was investigating your family? Evelyn's eyes widened fractionally. There, that flash of panic. I meant at the time. Initially. When everything was still unclear. But you just said is not, was. Present tense. Christina pressed, seeing the advantage. Who's investigating your family now, Evelyn? Nobody. I misspoke. Evelyn took another pull from her martini, her hand trembling slightly. Look, I didn't ask to meet so we could relitigate the past. I came to warn you. Warn me about what? About Hyunwoo Park. Evelyn's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. Christina, do you have any idea who he is? What he does? I know enough. No, you don't. He's not just some wealthy investor. He's organized crime, Christina. Korean Mafia. The man controls shipping routes, underground gambling, probably half the money laundering in this city. Evelyn leaned in, her French manicure perfect against the white tablecloth. He's using you. Whatever he's told you about helping prove Andrew's innocence, it's manipulation. Men like him don't help people out of kindness. Christina kept her expression carefully neutral. If he's as dangerous as you say, why would he bother with me? I'm nobody. A disgraced widow with nothing to offer. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Evelyn's frustration was evident now, her careful mask slipping. The gala was 3 days ago and already there's talk. Hyunwoo Park publicly defending you, taking you under his protection. Do you know what that looks like? What people are assuming? I don't particularly care what people assume. You should. Because when the FBI comes asking questions, and they will, you'll be implicated in whatever crimes he's committed. Evelyn reached across the table, grabbing Christina's hand. Please. Walk away from him. I can help you. My father has connections, legitimate connections. We can get you a job, maybe even a small apartment somewhere quiet where you can rebuild your life. There it was. The offer that sounded like rescue but felt like a cage. Your father, Christina said carefully. Richard Hartman. The same man whose investment firm manages offshore accounts. Evelyn's hand jerked back as if burned. What have you been told? Nothing concrete. Just patterns. Coincidences. Christina watched Evelyn's face, saw the calculations happening behind those blue eyes. Andrew worked with some of your father's clients, didn't he? Before he died. That's not, Christina, listen to me. Evelyn's voice took on a desperate edge. Whatever Hyunwoo has told you, whatever evidence he claims to have, it's probably fabricated. Men like him are experts at manipulation. They create narratives that implicate innocent people to cover their own crimes. So your father is innocent? Of course he's innocent. The words came out too loud, too fast. Evelyn modulated her tone. My father is a respected financier who's been in this business for 30 years. The suggestion that he'd be involved in something as crude as money laundering is absurd. Why do people defend the indefensible? Loyalty? Fear? Or willful blindness to truth? But you're worried, Christina observed. Worried enough to call me 17 times. Worried enough to offer me a job and an apartment. Things you couldn't be bothered with when I was sleeping on a friend's couch 2 years ago. What changed, Evelyn? Evelyn's composure finally shattered. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Do you want to know what changed? Hyunwoo Park is asking questions. Very specific questions about offshore accounts, shell corporations, and transactions that involved your dead husband. Questions that could destroy innocent people's reputations based on circumstantial connections. Or, Christina said softly, questions that could expose guilty people's crimes. There are documents, Evelyn hissed. Documents that could implicate you, Christina? Bank statements showing your account received transfers from those offshore accounts. If those documents became public. You're threatening me. I'm warning you. If you continue down this path with Hyunwoo, if you keep digging into things you don't understand, those documents will surface. And this time you won't be the Black Widow, you'll be a convicted criminal. Christina felt ice spread through her chest. Those documents would be falsified. Andrew never stole anything and neither did I. Try proving that in court. Try convincing a jury when the evidence looks damning. Evelyn sat back, her expression hardening into something Christina barely recognized. Walk away, Christina. Walk away from Hyunwoo Park, stop whatever investigation he's conducting, and those documents stay buried. Keep pushing and I can't protect you anymore. The words hung between them like smoke. Christina reached for her water glass with steady hands, buying time to process. Evelyn had just confirmed everything. The documents existed, her father was involved, and they were desperate enough to threaten forging evidence against Christina to protect themselves. Any more? Christina repeated quietly. You haven't protected me since Andrew died. You led the mob that destroyed me, Evelyn. So don't pretend this is concern for my well-being. It's concern for my family. Evelyn's mask cracked completely, revealing raw terror beneath. Do you know what will happen if these accusations become public? My father could go to prison. Our family name would be destroyed. Everything we've built. Everything you've built on stolen money and murder. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Evelyn's face went white. I never said. You just confirmed it. Christina stood, suddenly needing distance from this woman she'd once called friend. Thank you for lunch, Evelyn. And for the confession. I didn't confess anything. Evelyn stood as well, panic making her voice shrill. Christina, please. Think about what you're doing. Think about who you're trusting. Hyunwoo Park is a criminal. My father is a respected. Your father is a murderer who used my husband as a scapegoat and now wants to frame me to protect himself. Christina's voice was steel. I may not be able to prove it yet. But I will. She turned to leave, but Evelyn grabbed her arm with surprising strength. You think you're safe with him? You think a man like Hyunwoo Park protects people out of kindness? He owns you now, Christina. He'll use you up and discard you just like. Evelyn's words cut off as one of the businessmen from the bar appeared at Christina's elbow. Silent. Watching. Evelyn released Christina's arm immediately, her face draining of color as she recognized the implicit threat. I can walk myself out, Christina said quietly. But thank you. She left Evelyn standing alone at the table, martini untouched, the weight of her family's crimes visible in every line of her perfect face. Outside, the SUV was already waiting. Christina climbed in, her entire body shaking now that the performance was over. Jun Seo sat in the front seat, laptop open, already reviewing the audio recording. You did well, he said without looking up. Very well. She confirmed the documents exist, admitted her father's connection to the accounts, and threatened witness tampering. She also threatened to frame me. Christina's voice came out unsteady. Those fake bank statements. If they surface, they won't. Hyunwoo's voice came from beside her, and Christina jumped. She hadn't seen him in the shadowed corner of the SUV's back seat. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. I've already secured copies of the real bank records. Anything they fabricate now can be proven false. How long have you been here? The entire time. I couldn't. He stopped, jaw clenching. I couldn't stay away. Not when she might threaten you. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications Christina wasn't ready to examine. She's terrified, Christina said instead. Evelyn. She's protecting her father, but she's also terrified. Fear makes people dangerous, Hyunwoo said quietly. More dangerous than anger or greed. Remember that. The SUV pulled into traffic, carrying them back toward the penthouse, toward safety. But Christina couldn't shake the image of Evelyn's face. The terror, the guilt, the desperate calculation. They'd been friends once. Before money and murder and lies destroyed everything. Can you grieve for a friendship even when the person who killed it is still standing in front of you? Christina closed her eyes and let Hyunwoo's presence steady her. Tomorrow, Jun Seo would turn the recording over to his investigators. Tomorrow they'd plan the next move. Tonight, she'd allow herself to mourn the last piece of her old life that had just died in a restaurant over untouched martinis and unveiled threats. Edmund Purcell arrived at midnight, which told Christina everything she needed to know about the severity of what he'd discovered. The American fixer moved through Hyunwoo's penthouse like a ghost, middle-aged, unremarkable, the kind of man who disappeared in crowds. That was precisely what made him dangerous. Mrs. Barman. He nodded, setting a leather portfolio on the glass table between them. What I'm about to show you will change everything. Christina's fingers trembled as she reached for the documents. Hyunwoo stood behind her, his presence a wall of contained violence. She could feel the tension radiating from him, could sense he already knew what these papers contained. The first page was a witness statement. A dock worker named Miguel Torres, dated 3 days ago. Christina's vision blurred as she read his account of the night Andrew died. 2 men forcing a third into the East River, the muffled screams, the deliberate way they held him under. Your husband was murdered, Mrs. Barman, Edmund said quietly. And we have the man who watched it happen. Christina couldn't breathe. 2 years. 2 years of believing Andrew had taken the coward's way out, that he'd abandoned her to face the consequences alone. 2 years of shame that had never been hers to carry. Why? Her voice broke. Why didn't he come forward before? Fear. Edmund pulled out another document. Torres has a family. 3 kids. The men who killed your husband made it very clear what would happen if he talked. He glanced at Hyunwoo. Until Mr. Park's organization offered him protection. And a new life in California. Hyunwoo moved to the window, his silhouette sharp against the Manhattan skyline. Tell her the rest. Edmund's expression darkened. Richard Hartman orchestrated the entire money laundering scheme. Your husband was his instrument, unwitting at first, then trapped when he discovered the truth. The offshore accounts, the fabricated transactions, all of it leads back to Hartman and his network of financiers. Do you think Andrew knew he was going to die? Did he try to protect Christina by keeping her in the dark? Or was his silence a betrayal of trust? Christina stood abruptly, the room tilting. He knew. Andrew knew what they were doing and he tried to expose them. Yes. Hyunwoo turned from the window, his dark eyes burning with something that looked like vindication. And they killed him for it. Made it look like suicide. Destroyed his reputation so thoroughly that no one would question the official story. The papers scattered from Christina's hands. Justice. Vindication. Andrew's name cleared. Everything she'd fought for these 2 years. But the price was knowing her husband had been murdered, that he died terrified and alone while she slept in their bed, oblivious. There's more. Edmund's voice cut through her grief. Federal prosecutor Marcus Reed contacted us. He wants to meet with you, Mrs. Barman. Privately. Hyunwoo's jaw tightened. No. He said it's urgent. About the admissibility of evidence obtained through unconventional means. The meeting happened 2 days later in a coffee shop in Brooklyn, neutral territory, Edmund called it. Marcus Reed was younger than Christina expected, sharp-eyed and relentless in the way only true believers in justice could be. Mrs. Barman, I'll be direct. He slid a folder across the table. Everything Mr. Park's organization has uncovered is inadmissible in court. Witness intimidation, illegal surveillance, evidence obtained without warrants, I can't use any of it. Christina's heart sank. Then Andrew's murderers walk free? I didn't say that. Reed leaned forward. I'm saying that if you want legal justice, we need to build a parallel case. Clean evidence. Proper channels. But that means you cooperating with federal authorities, not a criminal organization. You want me to betray Hyunwoo. The words tasted like ash. I want you to understand what you're risking. Association with Park makes you complicit in organized crime. It destroys your credibility. And Mrs. Barman? His gaze was unflinching. It might destroy you. Would you choose legal justice that might fail or guaranteed revenge through illegal means? Where is the line between justice and vengeance? Christina returned to the penthouse with Reed's warnings echoing in her mind. Hyunwoo was waiting in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. He knew. Of course he knew. What did the prosecutor say? His voice was dangerously calm. That everything you've done for me is inadmissible. That I'm risking everything by staying here. Christina met his gaze. That I should choose the law over you. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Then Hyunwoo stood, moving toward her with predatory grace. And what do you choose, Christina? Her breath caught. This close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the barely leashed control that made him so dangerous. I don't know. I don't know if I can. You think I don't understand the cost? He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. You think I haven't calculated exactly what protecting you means for both of us? Then why? Christina whispered. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? His thumb traced her jaw, tilting her face up. Because from the moment you collided with me at that gala, I saw something the rest of them missed. Not a broken widow. Not a scandal. I saw someone still fighting when the world had given her every reason to surrender. Christina's pulse hammered. That's not an answer. You're right. Hyunwoo's other hand came up to frame her face, his touch possessive. The truth is, Christina Barman, you're not my employee. You're not my responsibility. You're mine. Under my protection, in my home, in my life. Say yes. The declaration struck her like lightning. Not a proposal. A claim. Raw and uncompromising and terrifying in its certainty. You can't just, I'm not a possession. No. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You're the woman I choose to stand beside me. The only one who's ever made me forget the cost of caring. Is this love or obsession? Can Christina trust her own feelings when she's so dependent on Hyunwoo's protection? Where does gratitude end and genuine desire begin? Christina should have pulled away. Should have maintained the careful distance she'd built around her heart. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, into the heat and danger of him. This is insane. You're a criminal. I'm trying to clear my husband's name through legal channels. Your husband is dead. Hyunwoo's grip tightened slightly. And the men who killed him won't be brought down by legal channels alone. You know this. You've known it since the moment you saw that witness statement. He was right. God help her, he was right. The Hartmans had too much power, too many connections. Traditional justice would take years, if it came at all. But Hyunwoo's justice would be swift, certain, and completely outside the law. What are you asking me to do? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I'm asking you to trust me. To let me finish what your husband started. To stop fighting alone. His forehead touched hers, their breaths mingling. Say yes, Christina. The kiss, when it came, wasn't gentle. It was claiming, consuming, a brand that marked her as irrevocably his. Christina's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed warnings. This was dangerous. This was a line she couldn't uncross. But when had safety ever brought her anything but pain? When Hyunwoo finally pulled back, his eyes were molten. No more prosecutors. No more legal compromises. We do this my way. Christina's lips were swollen, her resolve shattered. And if I say no? You won't. His certainty was absolute. Because you want them destroyed as much as I do. You want revenge, Christina. I can see it in your eyes. He was right. The desire for vengeance burned in her chest, hot and fierce and undeniable. She wanted Richard Hartman to suffer. Wanted Evelyn to know what it felt like to lose everything. Wanted justice, not the clean, sanitized version Reed offered, but the raw, brutal kind that Hyunwoo promised. Yes. The word escaped before she could stop it. Yes. Triumph flashed across Hyunwoo's face. He claimed her mouth again, sealing the bargain with heat and possession. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her lower lip. You're mine now, Christina. In every way that matters. She should have been terrified. Should have run. Instead, she felt something close to relief, like she'd finally stopped pretending to be someone she wasn't. But as Hyunwoo's phone buzzed with an incoming message, his expression went cold. He read it once, then looked at her with something that might have been regret. Get packed. We're leaving in an hour. What? Why? Richard Hartman's office just burned to the ground. His voice was ice. Someone's destroying evidence. And if they're willing to risk that, they'll be willing to risk far more. Christina's blood turned cold. Evelyn. Or her father. Either way, Hyunwoo's hand found hers, gripping tight. You're not safe here anymore. We're going to Aspen. Tonight. What happens when the hunters become desperate enough to burn their own house down? And can Christina survive what comes next? Wait, before Christina faces her final choice. Our channel was deleted without warning. Everything we built, gone. We're starting over, and honestly, we need you. If you're invested in Christina's story, if you want to see how this ends, hit that subscribe button right now. It takes 1 second but means everything to us. We're pouring everything into this comeback. Every view, every subscriber tells us we're not creating in the void. That someone cares. Don't let this story die half-told. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Be part of something special. Your support isn't just appreciated, it's what keeps us creating. One click. That's all we ask. The penthouse erupted into controlled chaos. Hyunwoo's security team materialized from shadows Christina hadn't known existed, moving with military precision. Mrs. Kang appeared in the doorway, already dressed for travel, her expression grim. How bad? She asked in Korean. Bad enough. Hyunwoo pulled Christina toward the bedroom. Pack only essentials. 5 minutes. Christina's hands shook as she grabbed clothes from the closet, the expensive pieces Hyunwoo had insisted on buying her, so different from her threadbare queen's wardrobe. The fire? Could it have been an accident? Hyunwoo's laugh was dark. Richard Hartman's downtown office spontaneously combusts the same day we get murder evidence? There are no coincidences in my world, Christina. She stuffed items into a bag, her mind racing. If the Hartmans were desperate enough to destroy evidence, what else were they desperate enough to do? The answer came with chilling clarity. Anything. Everything. A sharp crack split the air. Hyunwoo moved before Christina could process the sound, tackling her to the floor as the bedroom window exploded inward. Glass rained down, glittering like diamonds. Another crack. The mirror above the dresser shattered. Gunfire, Hyunwoo said calmly, his body covering hers. Stay down. Would you freeze in terror or trust someone you barely know to save your life? In that split second, what would your instincts choose? Fight, flight, or surrender? Christina's ears rang. Through the broken window, she could see the building across the street, a perfect vantage point for a sniper. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution attempt. Hyunwoo spoke rapid Korean into his phone, never moving from his position over her. His weight was solid, protective, the leashed violence in his body now fully unleashed. Security flooded the bedroom, automatic weapons drawn. South Building, 14th floor, Hyunwoo commanded. Find them. Sir, we need to move her now. Christina found her voice. They're really trying to kill me. Yes. Hyunwoo pulled her to her feet, keeping her low. Which means we were right about everything. And they're more afraid than we thought. Mrs. Kang appeared with a bulletproof vest, already helping Christina into it with practiced efficiency. Deep breath, child. Fear is useful only if it keeps you moving. They moved through the penthouse in formation, Hyunwoo in front, 2 guards flanking Christina, Mrs. Kang behind. The private elevator descended directly to the underground garage where 3 identical black SUVs waited, engines running. Decoys? Hyunwoo explained, guiding Christina toward the middle vehicle. They won't know which one you're in. As they peeled out of the garage, Christina twisted to look back. Smoke rose from the building across the street. Hyunwoo's men had already found the shooter's nest. Did they? He'll wish they'd killed him. Hyunwoo's voice was ice. By the time my people are done questioning him, we'll know exactly who sent him. Christina should have been horrified. Instead, she felt a savage satisfaction. These people had murdered Andrew. Had destroyed her life. Had just tried to kill her. Let them suffer. Edmund Purcell's voice crackled over the SUV speaker system. Federal task force just raided Hartman's offices. They're seizing everything that survived the fire. Convenient timing, Mrs. Kang observed dryly. Very. Hyunwoo's jaw tightened. Marcus Reed is making his move. With or without our cooperation. Christina stared at the Manhattan skyline receding behind them. So we're just running? Letting them win? We're regrouping. Hyunwoo finally looked at her, his dark eyes burning. There's a difference between retreat and strategy. The Hartmans think they've backed us into a corner. They're wrong. The drive to Teterboro Airport took 30 minutes. A private jet waited on the tarmac, sleek and anonymous. As they boarded, Christina caught sight of a news alert on one of the guards' phones. Financial Crimes Task Force raids Hartman Enterprises. Money laundering investigation expands. What was happening? The legal machinery was finally grinding into motion. But would it be enough? Sit. Hyunwoo guided her to a leather seat as the plane began taxiing. Mrs. Kang settled across from them, already reviewing documents on a tablet. The other guards distributed themselves throughout the cabin with military efficiency. When they were airborne, Hyunwoo handed Christina a glass of whiskey. She drank it in one burning gulp. I almost died. The words felt surreal. Someone just tried to kill me. Yes. No platitudes. No false comfort. Just acknowledgement of the brutal reality. Christina's hands started shaking, delayed shock setting in. Andrew. They killed Andrew like that. Did he know? In those last moments, did he understand what was happening? Hyunwoo pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling her head. Probably. And he would have been terrified. And angry. And desperate to get back to you. His voice roughened. But he also would have wanted you to survive. To live. Not to follow him into darkness. The tears came then hot and fierce. 2 years of grief crystallizing into this moment. Christina sobbed against Hyunwoo's shirt, feeling his arms tighten around her, anchoring her to the present when the past threatened to drown her. Is revenge worth becoming the thing you fear? And can you accept protection from someone whose methods horrify you? Mrs. Kang's voice was gentle. Let it out, child. Tears now mean strength later. When Christina finally pulled back, mascara streaking her face, Hyunwoo produced a handkerchief with surprising tenderness. Better? No. Christina wiped her eyes. But functional. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Functional is all I need from you right now. What about later? The question escaped before she could stop it. What happens when this is over? When the Hartmans are destroyed and Andrew's name is cleared? Hyunwoo's expression went unreadable. That depends on you. You said I was yours. That I belonged to you. Christina's voice steadied. But I don't even know what that means in your world. It means, he seemed to struggle for words, this man who commanded empires with a gesture. It means I will protect you. Provide for you. Defend you against anyone who threatens you. And in return you stay. You don't run. You don't choose the safe option over me. That's not partnership. That's ownership. Yes. No apology in his tone. In my world, there's no distinction. Christina pulled away, anger cutting through her grief. Then maybe I don't want your world. The plane hit turbulence, throwing her against him. Hyunwoo caught her easily, his hands spanning her waist. Don't lie to yourself. You've already chosen. The moment you said yes, the moment you kissed me back, you chose this. Chose me. I chose survival. No. His face was inches from hers. You chose revenge. You chose power. You chose to stop being a victim and start being the woman who makes her enemies pay. He was right. God, he was right, and that terrified her more than the assassination attempt. Because somewhere between the gala and this moment, Christina had stopped being the woman who hid in shadows and started being someone who wanted blood. This isn't a request, Hyunwoo continued, his voice dropping. You go where I can protect you. You stay in Aspen until I finish dealing with the Hartmans. And when I come for you, and I will come for you, Christina, we're settling this. All of it. Mrs. Kang cleared her throat delicately. Perhaps we should discuss practical matters? The Aspen estate is secure but isolated. Christina will need. Everything she needs will be provided. Hyunwoo didn't look away from Christina's face. Including this. He produced a small pistol from inside his jacket. Compact, elegant, deadly. Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. 9mm. Light enough for your hand, powerful enough to drop any threat. Christina stared at the weapon. I don't know how to. You'll learn. He placed it in her hands, adjusting her grip. Safety here. Aim for center mass. Don't hesitate. If someone threatens you, you shoot them. Understand? The gun was heavier than she expected, cold and brutal in its simplicity. You really think I could kill someone? If you had to? Yes. His certainty was absolute. You have a survivor's instinct, Christina. That's why you're still alive when so many others in your position would have surrendered. The plane began its descent toward Aspen. Through the window, Christina could see snow-capped mountains and endless wilderness. Beautiful. Remote. A gilded cage. How long? She asked quietly. A week. Maybe 2. Hyunwoo's hand found hers. Edmund and I will coordinate with Reed, build the legal case while my people handle the extra-legal aspects. The Hartmans won't know which way to defend. Mrs. Kong stood, gathering her things. And I will teach our Christina how to be a woman who survives in dangerous worlds. As the landing gear descended, Hyunwoo pulled Christina close one final time. I know you're angry. I know you're scared. But trust me when I say this. By the time I return, Richard Hartman will wish he'd never heard your husband's name. The promise in his voice was dark and absolute. Christina leaned into him, breathing in sandalwood and danger. And Evelyn? His smile was sharp enough to cut. Her especially. The plane touched down. Through the window, Christina could see armed guards waiting, SUVs idling. The Aspen estate. Her sanctuary and her prison. What price would she ultimately pay for Hyunwoo's protection? And when the time came to choose between the woman she was and the woman she was becoming, which one would survive? The Aspen estate sprawled across 50 acres of pristine wilderness, all glass and stone and brutal elegance. Christina stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her suite, watching dawn paint the mountains gold. 3 days since the assassination attempt. 3 days of silence from Hyunwoo except for terse security updates through Edmund. She was going mad with waiting. Mrs. Kong found her there, 2 coffee cups in hand. You'll wear grooves in that floor with your pacing. I can't just sit here while... Christina gestured helplessly toward Manhattan, toward everything happening without her. While he's out there risking everything. He's risking nothing he hasn't risked 1,000 times before. Mrs. Kong settled into a chair with regal composure. But you're right to worry. This time he has something to lose. Christina turned from the window. What do you mean? Sit, child. Let me tell you about the man who's claimed you. The story Mrs. Kong told was brutal in its simplicity. Hyunwoo's father had built the organization from nothing, clawing his way up through violence and strategy until he controlled half of New York's underground economy. But power made him careless. He'd fallen in love with a woman outside the life, Hyunwoo's mother, and that love had been his weakness. Rival organizations targeted her, Mrs. Kong said quietly. Used her to get to him. She died when Hyunwoo was 15. Right in front of him. Christina's blood ran cold. And his father? Destroyed everyone responsible. Then drank himself to death within a year. Mrs. Kang's eyes were distant with memory. Hyunwoo inherited the empire at 16. He swore he would never let emotion compromise his judgment. Would never let anyone close enough to be used against him. Until now. Christina understood with sudden clarity. I'm his weakness. You're his choice. Mrs. Kang's correction was sharp. There's a difference. He knows the risk. He's choosing you anyway. How do you accept love from someone whose last love ended in murder? And is it selfish to want that love despite the danger it brings? The training began that afternoon. Not the genteel self-defense Christina expected, but brutal, practical combat. Mrs. Kong moved like water despite her age, demonstrating strikes designed to disable rather than impress. Forget fairness, she instructed as Christina stumbled through another drill. Forget honor. If someone attacks you, you go for eyes, throat, groin. You fight dirty because you fight to survive. Christina's muscles screamed. Sweat soaked through her designer workout clothes. I can't, I'm not. You are. Mrs. Kong swept her legs out from under her. Christina hit the mat hard, gasping. You're just still pretending to be the delicate widow who needs protecting. Stop lying to yourself. Anger flared hot and fierce. Christina surged up, using the move Mrs. Kong had just taught her. The older woman blocked it easily, but approval flickered across her face. Better. Again. They trained for 3 hours until Christina could barely stand. That night, she video called Edmund on the secure line. Status? She demanded without preamble. Edmund's face was haggard. Richard Hartman's been arrested. Federal charges, conspiracy, money laundering, murder for hire. Prosecutor Reed has him dead to rights. Relief and disappointment warred in Christina's chest. So it's over? The legal part? Almost. Reed wants you to testify at the grand jury hearing next month. Your testimony would seal the case. Edmund paused. But there's a complication. What complication? Evelyn Hartman has disappeared. We had eyes on her penthouse, her country house, even her mother's estate in the Hamptons. She vanished 48 hours ago. Christina's skin prickled with warning. She's coming for me. We don't know that. I know it. Christina gripped the phone tighter. She blames me for her father's arrest. For everything falling apart. Where's Hyunwoo? Hunting her. Edmund's expression went grim. He's calling in every favor, burning every bridge. He will find her, Christina. But will he find her before she finds me? The days blurred together. Christina trained with Mrs. Kong until muscle memory replaced thought. She practiced with the pistol Hyunwoo had given her until she could draw and fire in under 2 seconds. She reviewed financial documents with Edmund, tracing the money trails that had destroyed Andrew and ruined dozens of families. And at night, alone in her luxurious prison, she confronted the woman she was becoming. The old Christina would have been horrified by her transformation. Would have insisted on legal channels, on doing everything the right way. But that Christina had been weak. Had let the world destroy her without fighting back. This Christina, the one who wanted Evelyn Hartman's blood, who felt savage satisfaction at Richard's arrest, who craved Hyunwoo's dangerous presence, she was stronger, harder, more honest about the darkness inside her. Was this who she'd always been? Or was Hyunwoo right? Was she simply finally becoming who she needed to be to survive? Mrs. Kong found her on the shooting range one evening, emptying clip after clip into paper targets. Every shot was Evelyn's face. Every pull of the trigger was justice for Andrew. You're getting good, the older woman observed. I'm getting dangerous. Christina reloaded with practiced efficiency. Is that the same thing? In our world? Yes. Mrs. Kong stepped closer. But I need to ask you something, Christina. When this is over, when the Hartmans are destroyed and justice is served, what then? Christina lowered the weapon. What do you mean? Will you return to your old life? Try to reclaim the woman you were before Andrew died? Mrs. Kang's gaze was penetrating. Or will you choose the new life? The dangerous one? The one with my nephew? The question Christina had been avoiding for weeks. She looked at the target, Evelyn's imagined face riddled with holes, and felt no remorse. No horror at what she'd become. Only grim satisfaction. I don't want my old life back, she admitted quietly. That woman was a victim. Was weak. Let people destroy her without fighting back. And the woman you are now? Christina met Mrs. Kang's eyes. She doesn't run. She doesn't hide. She makes her enemies pay. She paused. She wants Hyunwoo. Not because he saved her. But because she's seen his ruthlessness and his honor, and she wants both. Approval warmed Mrs. Kang's expression. Then you're ready for what comes next. Which is? He's coming back tomorrow. And Christina? Mrs. Kang's voice dropped. He's bringing Evelyn with him. The world tilted. He found her? Found her. Broke her. Got everything we need for both the legal case and our own justice. Mrs. Kang's smile was sharp. Now you have to decide. Do you want to face her? Or let Hyunwoo handle it? Christina thought of Andrew. Of 2 years of shame and poverty and whispers. Of the assassination attempt and the burning office and all the lives the Hartmans had destroyed in their greed. She thought of the woman she'd been, broken, hiding, accepting the world's judgment without question. And she thought of the woman she was becoming, dangerous, powerful, unashamed. "I want to face her," Christina said. "I want Evelyn Hartman to look me in the eye and understand exactly what she's lost." Mrs. Kong nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Because in Hyunwoo's world, mercy is weakness. And you, my dear, are no longer weak." That night, Christina cleaned the pistol one more time. Tomorrow Hyunwoo would return. Tomorrow she would face the woman who'd helped destroy her life. Tomorrow she would make her final choice, between the safe, legal justice Marcus Reed offered and the brutal, certain vengeance Hyunwoo promised. She already knew which one she wanted. The question was, could she live with that choice? Could she become the woman who pulled the trigger and felt no regret? Christina looked at herself in the mirror, no longer the broken widow in the off-the-rack dress, but someone harder, sharper, more dangerous. Yes, she could live with it. She would live with it. And tomorrow, Evelyn Hartman would learn exactly what happens when you push a survivor too far. The helicopter arrived at dawn, its rotors cutting through mountain silence like a blade. Christina stood on the estate's landing pad, the weight of the pistol at her hip both foreign and familiar. Mrs. Kong waited beside her, expression unreadable. The door opened. Hyunwoo stepped out first and Christina's breath caught. He looked different, harder, more dangerous, like he'd shed whatever civilization he'd worn in New York and revealed the predator beneath. His eyes found hers immediately, burning with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Behind him, two of his men dragged Evelyn Hartman from the helicopter. Christina barely recognized her former friend. Gone was the polished socialite in designer silk. This Evelyn was broken, hair tangled, expensive clothes torn and dirty, one eye swollen shut. But it was the fear in her remaining eye that satisfied Christina most. Pure animal terror. "Christina." Hyunwoo crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands framing her face. "You're safe." "I'm fine." She couldn't look away from Evelyn. "Is she alive? Intact?" "Exactly as promised." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "What happens next is your choice." Evelyn's laugh was broken glass. "My choice? You let this bitch decide my fate." One of the guards struck her across the face. Christina didn't flinch. "Take her to the basement," Hyunwoo ordered without looking away from Christina. "Mrs. Kong, please prepare the study. Edmund should be arriving within the hour." As Evelyn was dragged away, still cursing, Christina finally met Hyunwoo's gaze. "You found her. I told you I would." He pulled her against him and she felt the tension vibrating through his body. "I always keep my promises, Christina." "What did you do to her?" "Nothing permanent. Yet." His voice dropped. "I wanted you to have that choice. To decide how much justice you need. Is there a point where revenge becomes as monstrous as the original crime? And does Christina have the strength, or the cruelty, to cross that line?" In the study, Edmund was already setting up his laptop, connecting to secure federal channels. Marcus Reed's face appeared on screen within minutes, his expression grave. "Mrs. Barman. Mr. Park." Reed's jaw tightened at seeing them together. "I've got good news and complicated news." "Richard Hartman?" Christina asked, singing like a canary. "Grand jury indictment came through this morning. 23 counts including conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, wire fraud." Reed's satisfaction was evident. He's looking at life without parole. And he's giving up everyone he worked with to try for a deal. Christina's legs weakened. Justice. Real legal justice. Andrew's name would be cleared. The conspirators would face consequences. Everything she'd fought for these 2 years. "What's the complicated part?" Hyunwoo asked. Reed's gaze shifted. "Evelyn Hartman. She's wanted on 8 federal charges. If you have her, Mr. Park, you need to turn her over to federal custody immediately. Anything else is kidnapping and obstruction." "We don't have her," Hyunwoo said smoothly. "We're simply hosting her until proper authorities can be notified. Don't play games with me." Reed's voice hardened. "Mrs. Barman, you're at a crossroads. You can let the law handle this, testify at trial, and walk away clean. Or you can let Park handle it his way, and become complicit in whatever he does to her. Christina looked at Hyunwoo, at Edmund, at Mrs. Kang's knowing expression, then back at Reed's face on the screen. When would you need my testimony? Grand jury hearing is in 2 weeks. Trial probably 6 months after that. Reed leaned forward. Christina, listen to me. You've been through hell. You deserve justice. But the right kind of justice. Not the kind that destroys who you are. Who I am. Christina's voice was steady. Prosecutor Reed, I'm not the broken widow you think I am. I stopped being her the moment someone tried to put a bullet in my skull. Reed's expression shifted to something like pity. Then I'm sorry for what you're about to lose. The connection ended. In the silence that followed, Edmund pulled up another screen. We've also frozen the Hartman's offshore accounts. $47 million across 8 countries. Hyunwoo's contacts in the Caymans were very cooperative. How cooperative? Christina asked. Edmund's smile was sharp. Let's just say several of Richard Hartman's co-conspirators suddenly remembered evidence they'd been hiding. Bank records. Email chains. Even a recording of Richard ordering the hit on your husband. Christina's heart stuttered. A recording? Andrew was smarter than they thought. He wore a wire to his last meeting with Hartman. Edmund played the audio file. Andrew's voice filled the room, alive, terrified, desperate. You're laundering money for the Kozlov organization. I have proof. I'm going to the FBI. Richard Hartman's response was ice cold. No, Andrew. You're not. Take him to the river. Make it look like suicide. Andrew's screams were cut short. Then silence. Christina's vision blurred. 2 years of not knowing, of wondering if Andrew had betrayed her, of believing he'd chosen death over facing consequences. And all along he'd been a hero. Had tried to expose them. Had died trying to do the right thing. He fought, she whispered. He tried to stop them. Hyunwoo's hand found hers. He was brave. And he'd be proud of what you've become. Would he? Would Andrew recognize the woman Christina had become? The one who wanted blood, who stood beside a mafia boss, who was about to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. Mrs. Kang stood. I'll bring Evelyn up. If you're going to confront her, do it now. Before you lose your nerve. I won't lose my nerve. Christina checked the pistol at her hip. I've been waiting 2 years for this. When Evelyn was dragged into the study, her remaining eye widened at seeing Christina armed and composed. You can't be serious. Christina, we were friends. Were we? Christina's voice was ice. Friends don't destroy each other for profit. Friends don't stand by while innocent people are murdered. I didn't know what my father was doing. Liar. Christina stepped closer. You knew everything. You warned your father when Andrew started asking questions. You helped cover up the murder. You tried to have me killed. Evelyn's composure cracked. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. I understand perfectly. Christina pulled the pistol, aimed it at Evelyn's head with steady hands. I understand that you're a coward who let other people die to protect your lifestyle. Evelyn's face went white. Christina, please? Mrs. Kang asked me a question last week, Christina continued, her finger on the trigger. She asked if I wanted my old life back. The safe one. The legal one. The one where I let people like you destroy me without fighting back. Silence stretched. Hyunwoo didn't move, didn't interfere. This was Christina's choice. Her moment. I wanted to say yes, Christina whispered. I wanted to be that woman again, the one who believed in justice and fairness and doing things the right way. Evelyn sobbed with relief. Thank you, thank God. But that woman is dead. Christina's aim never wavered. You killed her when you helped murder my husband. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to federal custody. You're going to trial. And you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, knowing that the Black Widow you mocked destroyed your entire world. She lowered the gun. Evelyn collapsed, weeping. Call Reed, Christina told Edmund. Tell him we have a very cooperative witness who wants to make a deal. Hyunwoo's expression was unreadable. You chose the legal route. I chose justice. Christina holstered the weapon. But not because I'm weak. Because I'm strong enough to let her suffer the consequences of her choices. Death would be too easy for her. Mrs. Kang's laugh was approving. Smart girl. Prison is a special hell for socialites. As federal agents arrived to take Evelyn into custody, Edmund pulled up the final documentation. Richard Hartman's assets are being liquidated to pay restitution to his victims. That includes you, Christina. You're looking at approximately $8 million. $8 million. Enough to never worry about money again. Enough to rebuild everything she'd lost. But as Christina watched Evelyn being led away in handcuffs, she realized the money didn't matter. What mattered was standing here, whole and strong, having made her choice not from weakness but from power. Now that you're free and vindicated, Mrs. Kang said softly, echoing her question from before, will you return to your old life? Or choose the new one? Christina looked at Hyunwoo, dangerous, powerful, completely outside the law. The man who'd avenged Andrew. Who'd protected her. Who'd given her the tools to become someone who didn't need protecting. I choose the new one, she said. But on my terms. Hyunwoo's slow smile was predatory and approving. Then we have some things to discuss, Christina Barman. The federal agents left. Edmund packed his equipment. Mrs. Kang retreated with diplomatic discretion. And Christina stood facing the man who'd claimed her, ready to negotiate the terms of her surrender or her partnership. What happens when two people who refuse to be victims find each other? And can love exist between equals when one of them is a mafia boss? They stood alone in the study, mountain silence pressing against the windows. Hyunwoo moved to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey with deliberate precision. When he handed one to Christina, his fingers lingered against hers. You surprised me, he said finally. Because I didn't kill her? Christina took a long drink, feeling the burn. Or because I made my own choice instead of waiting for yours? Both. His dark eyes assessed her with that predatory focus that made her pulse quicken. I expected the broken widow from the gala. Instead, I'm looking at a woman who held a gun to her enemy's head and chose calculated cruelty over quick violence. Disappointed? Impressed. He stepped closer, crowding her space in a way that should have felt threatening but instead felt electric. You're not the woman I claimed that night, Christina. You're something far more dangerous. She held her ground, chin lifting. Then maybe your claim isn't valid anymore. Maybe the woman you wanted doesn't exist. She never did. Hyunwoo's hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb tracing her lower lip. I didn't want the victim, Christina. I wanted the survivor. The fighter. The woman who would stand beside me and make our enemies bleed. Stand beside you? Christina's laugh was sharp. You said I was yours. That I belonged to you. That's not standing beside, that's kneeling. His grip tightened slightly. Then let me be clearer. When I said you're mine, I meant it. Completely. Without reservation. But, his other hand found her waist, pulling her flush against him. If you think I don't know that I'm equally yours, you haven't been paying attention. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Christina's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying the moment you collided with me at that gala, something shifted. I've spent 15 years building walls, refusing attachments, turning myself into something inhuman so no one could use my emotions against me. His forehead touched hers. And then you looked at me with those eyes, terrified but defiant, and I decided. No negotiation. No logic. Just instinct. That's insane. Yes. No apology. But insanity is the only honest response to you, Christina Barman. Is possession the same as partnership? Can you belong to someone who belongs equally to you? Or is this just a beautiful lie to justify the darkness between them? Christina's free hand fisted in his shirt. Marcus Reed asked me a question before the grand jury testimony. He asked if I understood what I was choosing. If I was prepared to testify that I received no help from criminal organizations in pursuing justice for Andrew. Hyunwoo went still. What did you tell him? I told him the truth. She met his gaze. That the only help I received was from a man who saw me as a person worth protecting when the entire legal system saw me as collateral damage. That if wanting justice for my murdered husband makes me complicit in organized crime, then I'm guilty as charged. Something blazed in Hyunwoo's eyes, triumph, possession, and something that might have been vulnerability. Reed will come after you for that. Let him try. Christina's voice was steel. I'm done hiding. Done apologizing. Done pretending I'm ashamed of surviving. Even if surviving means living in my world? With my rules? His hand slid up her spine, possessive. Because make no mistake, Christina, I don't do halfway. If you choose me, you choose everything. The danger. The violence. The moral ambiguity. All of it. Christina thought of the past 3 weeks. Of learning to shoot, to fight, to embrace the darkness she'd always pretended didn't exist inside her. Of watching Evelyn break and feeling satisfaction instead of horror. Of standing here with a mafia boss and feeling safer than she ever had in her legitimate, legal, proper life. Then ask me properly, she said. Not as a claim. As a choice. Hyunwoo pulled back slightly, surprise flickering across his features. Then his expression shifted to something that might have been respect. You want the power to refuse. I want the power to choose. There's a difference. For a long moment he simply looked at her. Then, impossibly, Hyunwoo Park, the most feared man in New York's underworld, smiled. A real smile, not the predatory flash of teeth but something genuine and almost tender. Christina Barman. His hands framed her face with unexpected gentleness. Will you stay in my world? Stand beside me as an equal? Let me possess you while you possess me just as completely? That's still not a proposal, she pointed out. Because I'm not proposing marriage. I'm proposing something more binding. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. I'm proposing that you become mine in every way that matters, partner, lover, equal weapon. That we build something together that's both legal and illegal, both civilized and savage. That we stop pretending we're not exactly what we are. Two people who refuse to be victims and will burn the world down before we kneel to anyone. Christina's heart hammered. This wasn't a romantic declaration. It was a contract written in blood and fire. A promise of darkness and power and brutal honesty about what they both were capable of. And if I say yes? Her voice was barely audible. What happens then? Then tomorrow you testify at the grand jury. You clear Andrew's name. You take your 8 million in restitution and become wealthy again. Hyunwoo's thumbs traced her cheekbones. And every night after that you come home to me. To this life. To the woman you've become. People will judge me. They already do. The question is, do you care? He pulled her closer. I think you've stopped caring what people think. I think you've realized that their judgment has no power unless you give it power. He was right. God help her, he was right. Christina didn't care anymore what Manhattan society thought. Didn't care about being respectable or proper or fitting back into the world that had chewed her up and spit her out. She cared about justice. About power. About standing beside someone who saw her as she truly was and wanted her anyway. Yes, she breathed. I choose you. This world. This life. All of it. Hyunwoo's kiss was claiming, consuming, a brand that marked her as irrevocably his even as his surrender to her was equally complete. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. You understand what this means? His voice was rough. You're mine, Christina. And I will destroy anyone who threatens you. We'll cross any line. We'll become a monster if that's what keeping you safe requires. I know. She gripped his shirt tighter. And you're mine. Which means I'm going to hold you to the same standards I hold myself to. We don't become the thing we're fighting against. We stay ruthless but not cruel. Powerful but not monstrous. His laugh was low and appreciative. Already setting boundaries. Already pushing back. This is why I chose you. Because I challenge you? Because you're the only person who can. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. Partnership means I don't always get my way. It means compromise. Negotiation. Trust. Christina pulled back enough to look at him properly. Can you do that? Can the most feared mafia boss in New York actually compromise? For you? Hyunwoo's smile was sharp and genuine. I'll try. But I'm warning you now, I'm terrible at it. I'll be possessive and controlling and probably insufferable. And I'll be stubborn and argumentative and refuse to just obey orders. Good. He traced her jaw. I'd be bored with obedience. Mrs. Kang's voice drifted from the hallway. If you two are finished negotiating terms, Edmund has the helicopter ready. The grand jury hearing is in 6 hours, and Christina needs to look like a grieving widow, not a mafia boss's lover. They broke apart, breathing hard, the future suddenly crystallizing before them. Christina would testify. Would stand in front of a grand jury and tell the truth about Andrew's murder, about the conspiracy, about everything except Hyun-woo's involvement. She'd walk the line between legal and illegal with the same precision she'd learned to walk everything else in this new life. And then she'd come back to him. One more thing, Hyun-woo said as they headed toward the door. The penthouse on Billionaires Row. It's yours. In your name. 8,000 square feet of independence so you never feel trapped. Christina stopped. Why? Because partnership means you always have the power to leave. To choose me every day instead of being forced by circumstance. His expression was serious. I want you to stay because you want to. Not because you have nowhere else to go. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to everything his possessive claiming had suggested, that Christina felt her eyes burn. This man, this dangerous, ruthless, powerful man, understood her in ways no one else ever had. I won't need it, she said softly. But thank you. You might. Especially when I'm insufferable. He pulled her close one more time. Promise me something, Christina. What? That when you testify, when you stand in that courthouse and face all those people who judged you, you remember who you really are. Not the Black Widow. Not the victim. Not even the survivor. His voice was fierce. You're the woman who made her enemies pay. Who chose power over victimhood. Who looked at the most dangerous man in New York and decided he was worth the risk. Christina kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't yet say into the contact. When they parted, she smiled, not the broken widow's smile, but something fierce and certain. I promise. Now let's go end this chapter so we can start the next one. 6 months later, Christina stood in federal court, watching Richard Hartman receive 4 consecutive life sentences. Evelyn got 25 years. The money laundering network was dismantled. Andrew's name was cleared, his murder avenged, his legacy restored. And every night, Christina went home to the penthouse she never used because she preferred Hyun-woo's fortress, to the man who possessed her as completely as she possessed him, to a life that was both legal and illegal, both savage and civilized, both partnership and possession. She testified by day, building a consulting firm that helped fraud victims navigate the legal system. And by night, she stood beside Hyun-woo as he rebuilt his empire with her strategic mind and his ruthless execution. 2 people who refused to be victims had found each other. And together they were unstoppable. The Black Widow had become something far more dangerous. A woman who knew her own power and wasn't afraid to use it. So, did Christina's ending leave you breathless? Here's the truth. We almost didn't finish this story. After losing our original channel, we questioned everything. But comments like yours kept us going. If this story meant anything to you, if you felt Christina's transformation, her power, her choice, please subscribe. We're rebuilding from ashes, and every single subscriber is a lifeline. We have more stories like this. More powerful women. More dangerous men. More impossible choices. But we can't create them without you. Subscribe now. Help us rise. Be the reason the next story gets told. Your one click equals our entire future. Don't leave us in the dark.